Hey,
All right.
everybody! The
So,
countdown wasn't as quick as I thought.
yeah, I had ChatGPT come up with a title for this, which might change depending on what we talk about, but do you want to hear it?
Yeah, let's hear it.
It was How We Balance Relationships, Family, and Our Online Businesses. Does that
Aw,
sound like pretty good on the topics we want to talk about today?
I like it. Yeah, that's good.
It also
Today,
said, you know how they can do like the spacer or whatever? It was like spacer, two entrepreneurs talk. But I don't know if we need the two entrepreneurs talk. We could probably put like DCD number 13 or whatever episode we're on.
that's crazy. 13 episodes. It doesn't feel like a lot when you look at the numerical number, but when you think how long we've been doing, like probably
That's
like
like
20
4
weeks
months.
now.
Yeah.
Yes, we've had a couple weeks where we didn't do it, but yeah, no, it's good to be back. I feel a little rusty, a little rusty. I know we had one last week, but I feel out of the groove on the podcasts.
I know. I'm in 2023. The most thing I'm excited for is getting back into a routine of like, at the end of the year, you've got a bunch of like family stuff and you've got to travel a little bit and things get out of whack. I'm really excited to get back into the routine of like Monday through Friday. This is what I'm accomplishing. Here's my goals for this week. Like, I'm really excited to get back into that.
Yeah, I am as well. But this topic today is going to be good. It's not any topics I don't think, and you can speak for it too. But I don't think I've seen a lot of people talk about these little bit of things. Like it's always been, here's how to make more money on your site. Here's how to grow your traffic. But like we're talking a little bit more about the background things of like how do you be present in your relationships when you're building your site? What does work life balance look like? Um, Expectations of brand new sites, sharing wins and losses, those various
Yeah.
things.
I've listened to a lot of podcasts where they have other people on and they're like, this person made 20 grand in like 3 years. Or they're up to 20 grand a month in the like 3 years they've been working on this. And it's always like, here's how I did keyword research. Here's how I did internal linking. Here's how I made these amazing images that I put on my site. Here's how I monetized it. Here's how I squeezed out an extra $1,000 a month. And on those podcasts that I listen to, I don't really hear people being like, yo, it was like month 6 and we were really struggling financially. And my wife was like, why do you have to be spending your time doing this? And like you don't hear like the struggles and like the relationship parts and like the boundaries of like, hey, I'm going out to the office to work. Like, can I have like 6 hours or 8 hours of like what do you call it? You're working undistracted work. Like they don't talk about that kind of stuff. They just talk about like the specific things like keyword research and how to monetize and stuff. So I think it'd be super cool. I think this video will be for a specific set of people. I don't think it'll be for everyone. But I think the people that do watch it, it's really going to resonate with them.
Yeah, so the first topic is being present in your relationship while you're also building things. So this is something we're in marital counseling. We just got married. We're finishing up the
Oh,
actually
by the way,
as I'm
when
taking
Nico
my
says we, he doesn't mean me and him. He's got a wife and I've got a wife.
Yeah, my wife and I are in marital counseling. We're finishing up the last little bit of sessions, and a big topic that we were talking on was being present in your relationship when you're building whatever projects you're in. And how this resonates with me is I like to work on the blog a ton, and I have a issue with being present sometimes with my wife, and like we could be sitting on the couch next to each other, and she will be like there in that moment, and I'll be like thinking about the blog, like I wonder how the traffic's doing, what can I do for the website tomorrow, and like struggling a little bit on being present, which I
Yeah,
think you've mentioned a couple of times you've struggled with that as well.
I think I've gotten better about it, and I can give some tips on what I've like changes I've made to make it a little easier. And actually, one of them applies to you right now that you could probably do. I guess I'll just like start off. So I used to like work. We had like 2 bedrooms, and so one bedroom was our bedroom, and the other bedroom was like where I worked. And I just leave the door open. So if she wanted like to talk to me or something, she'd just stroll in and talk to me. And I was fine with that. But like when you're working on something, some like specifically writing, like when you're working on a blog, if you're in the middle of a paragraph and someone asks you a question, it can take like 2 to 5 to 10 minutes to get back in the zone of writing. And eventually, we are fortunate enough. I built this like office out here. It's like I think it's like 13 feet by 22 feet, so it's pretty decent sized office. And so now I actually have to like leave the house and then walk out into like a shed. So if she wants to like ask me a question or like I'm not within immediate reach, and that makes it a little bit more of a gap to where I can see like you like you literally work in the living room. And so if she's cooking or something, it's really easy for her to like ask you a question, which it's also a good thing to like schedule when you can work. Uh, based on when your partner is like when they're home or when they're working too. But that was one thing that I saw that really helped me like kind of compartmentalize when I worked, is actually having a specific time frame and then also a specific space that I went to come and work. So now when I go inside, it's like it's harder to work because my computer actually, like my desktop, isn't even in the room. So it's a little bit more of like a distance thing. That's just something that like really helped me, having this office to come out here and like, hey, I'm in work mode now, and then I go inside, and everyone needs like 10 to 30 minutes to like kind of like cool down or like stop thinking about it, and that really helps. But having this like separate space that I work, and it's like my work zone, has really helped me with like when I go back inside to be more like present.
Yeah, and we've had various conversations about that, and like being in the living room is hard sometimes because she'll be like, I do a lot of my work when she's at work because
Hmm.
it's basically like having a second office thing because she's at work and I'm here. But it's a little difficult to. I figure I could do more browsing when she's here with me more than like deep work, and I think something that has helped me be a little bit more present is understanding that the reason I'm having success in this outlet of my life is because she's providing security in this aspect of my life. So like I need to make sure that's being built up still and
Hmm.
being like, okay, this will keep growing here as long as I'm focusing on her at her times as well. So
Yeah.
like, which is it's really hard because you can say that you're being present and you're still not. It's just trying to be mindful of the moment of like, hey, I need to turn this off. I need to turn this business or this thinking off and just be here for this person
Yeah.
because she struggles with feeling second to the business,
Hmm.
which I won't speak for her a ton. She could get on here for all I care and tell how she feels. But she has mentioned that she feels second to the business, and I would assume it's probably how a lot of spouses feel to like the guy or the girl building a business is like their thoughts are probably a lot more on how do I get this to work than this person who you know is probably going to be here no matter what. I love her for that, and I don't want to take that for granted.
Hmm.
But it's been interesting.
Yeah, something that I still struggle with, and you can say if you feel the same, is like with it being an online business and like you setting your own hours and stuff, it's really easy, even with my like workspace out here, for me to go inside and be like, my mind still wanders about stuff or problems that I'm working on. Do you experience that?
Yeah, and it's hard to turn it off because you can check it anywhere. Like when
Yeah,
you leave,
analytics.
yeah, when you leave a business, you can be like, all right, phone's off. I'm done. Maybe you might think about the projects of tomorrow, but you're like phones off, no more phone calls, done, shutting this down. But then you're like, oh, let me just hop on and look at this article real quick or do a little tiny bit of keyword research since I'm already sitting here.
Yeah, or even like open up the analytics app and be like, how many clicks did I get today? Like,
She I get yelled at that, not yelled. I get talked to about that pretty often because she's like, doesn't it only update once a day? She's like, why if you checked it 5 times today or the search console?
hmm.
And I'm like, I just want the
Oh yeah.
gratification.
You can I realize you can change it to like the previous date before it actually updates, and it like slowly through the day it like gets
Yeah.
higher. Yeah.
Yeah. So she'll be like, why not just check it at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day? And I'm like, I need to. I can tell my mind's searching for that now. So
Oh, you're saying that she has a good point. Like it's better to just
yeah,
check it
better
once.
just or check it once a week. But I've talked about that in my last income report.
Hmm.
Yeah, and something that's been helping is being more efficient, is working on being more efficient during the day. So I'm not having to worry about those tasks at night because I've realized that I struggle with not being present when I haven't done everything I thought I wanted to do that day. So if I can
I
be more
see.
efficient through the day, being like, I did those 2 articles, I did those 2 videos, I
Ooh,
updated this, I'm okay with not thinking about it. But like if I didn't do those, I'm like, oh crap, how can I fit it in? Is this going to be okay? How can I do this tomorrow?
that's a really good point. I'll say personally, like every day I try to do three main things. So I read a book a long time ago that said like if you try to do 10 things, it's like they're probably smaller things. Whereas if you like try to do one thing, it's like you finish it and you can probably do more. So I try to come up with three main things that I do each day. And sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's only 2 big things, and sometimes I just got to try to fill in like a couple extra hours. But what I've realized is whatever I write, and most of this I do the night before, so I don't try to like walk into the office and be like, what am I doing today? I try to like the night before I go to bed, or even like the right before I leave the office to go like inside. I try to come up with like what I'm gonna do tomorrow, and so that usually like when I come into the office, I already know what I'm going to be doing. And so if I leave that day crossing off those 3 things that I said I was going to do, it's like I'm in a really good mood because I like maybe I shouldn't let it affect my feelings, but I'm like, hey, I did everything I said I was going to do today. And then like the rest of the night, I'm not thinking about like, what do I need? Like, hey, I didn't get that done. Or like, hey, like, can we watch a TV show so she can watch TV and I can like work on the laptop? And I realize when I like say, hey, I'm going to do these 3 things, and then I do these 3 things at the end of the day, if I did those 3 things, I'm way more present, if that makes sense. And that's actually something that I just realized when you said what you were talking about before you brought this up. So I'm really glad that you like made me be self-aware about that.
This podcast is working, Theodore.
It's beneficial to us, yes.
And I think we're going to have another podcast, or I might make a separate video. It's probably just a chance that it'll be a podcast. My routine of creating videos have not been there. On how to be more efficient with your day. So like something I'm starting to work on is, and I've mentioned this to TJ this morning, something I've wanted to do this month is every bit of my tasks turn into times so that my day is as efficient as it can be.
Mm-hmm.
So like if I'm writing a blog post, you're like, this takes 45 minutes. Making this video takes 30. Like now I know I can fit everything into that day. So just learning how to be more efficient so that I'm there and being present.
That makes sense. I actually mentioned to you earlier that I did something very similar, but kind of backwards to where, like at the end of the day, I would just write down what I did. And so at the end of the month, I could look and see like, this is what I do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And I could just look at it and see like what I have been doing. And what I realized is there was quite a few days where I just like, wow, I did like one thing that day and I could have done more. And when I started like writing down what I did the day of, and seeing that, I was like, man, this week has not been as productive as it should have been. And then it like helped me, like motivated me. I'm definitely motivated by numbers, and we've talked about that. So like this week, like I want to put more things on that done list. But what you're saying is like you would do it the other way around, where you're like, hey, it takes me 2 hours to write an article, it takes me 15 minutes to add images, and then basically you'd be like, well, if it's 2 hours this, and then it's 15 minutes for this, like I've got enough time to do 3 of them. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, so my thought process, and this could change because I haven't fully committed to it yet, is I set 8 hours in the day. So you got 8 hours, and you're like, I have these 10 tasks that take 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. How do I fit them best into this 8-hour period? And then things that I also need to do that I need to fit in here, but it's like, those aren't really that important, but they need done. Mm-hmm. Figure out someone who can delegate to that. So like you with answering emails, like you have a specific 8 hours and you're like, writing is most beneficial, editing, talking to these people, but answering emails need done, but it's not most important in my time block. So how can I have someone else do that?
That makes sense. Yeah, that's really interesting. I probably should do something like that.
So it's trying to use the 8 hours to the best of my advantage so that I'm present when I get home, or very tired and just want to go to bed. We'll see.
That makes sense.
Something else that's been good for the personal life is having the same goal / outlook. So also in marital counseling, we have a great couple who we've been talking to. It's hard for them to think about something as a sacrifice or you working hard on something if they don't share the same goal at the end of the day with you, or they don't see the value of that goal. So, for example, say my wife doesn't want to work. Like she's like, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. And I'm like, okay, I want that for you and our kid when we have a kid one day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working hard right now to be able to build this up to get you to that goal. But she needs to see the goal and then the work that gets to the goal, or she's not going to appreciate that or understand that there's sacrifices needing to be had for that.
Yeah. So like communication on what the end outcome is, or what you both want the end outcome to be.
Yeah. And then she needs to like truly believe that that's what she wants. Because if she's like, oh yeah, it'd be cool for me to stay at home, but she doesn't realize it's going to take me working 10 hours some days trying to do this or not being there fully, like then she will be like, oh, did I really want this? Because he's not really here for this. So it's like
That makes
trying
sense.
to keep that a rolling line of like making sure you guys are aligned.
Yeah, I remember I was definitely younger. This was like 7 years ago when I was working on that first YouTube channel. And I remember I had a part-time job, but I was also like when I wasn't at the part-time job, I was like working on the YouTube channel. And I remember saying no to a lot of stuff that people did not like me saying no to, like, "Hey, can you go to your little brother's like ball game?" And I was like, "I really shouldn't tonight. Like I need to like I want this thing. I see this thing growing and I want it to keep growing. I need to like make another video." And I remember like feeling kind of bad about that, but I also remember like if this works, I'll be able to go to any ball game I want to in the future. And so for me at the time, it was kind of hard to like I knew what I wanted. I wanted in the future to be able to go to any ball game, but I also knew like I would have to give up that ball game tonight. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And there's some YouTuber I've watched a couple of times where he goes and talks to a bunch of 70-year-olds. And it was a really interesting episode when he just to talk about being able to like sacrificing now for more later.
Mm-hmm.
It was really interesting because one guy was like, I wish I would have worked more in the beginning so I had more time at the end. And then the other guy was like, I wish I would have worked more at the end so I had more time in the beginning. And
That's interesting.
it's like whatever side you're on, you're gonna want the other thing, which is really interesting. And it's like you just gotta sit in your puddle and deal with it.
Like it's like being grateful and actually being in the present. Like
Yeah.
if there's both people who wanted the other things, that you've got to like admit that you might be the person in the future that was like, I wish I was the other way around. And so it's like if that's the case, you might as well just appreciate what you have and the decision you're making now. And like if you're gonna make a decision, at least enjoy it. Actually, that's something I learned. What was it? We're trying to lose weight together, and so there's there's a thing when you try to lose weight called cheat days where it's like or cheat meals where it's like, this doesn't fit in my calorie budget or this isn't helping me get to my goal, but like I really want this like piece of food or whatever. And so in that, it's like if I ever make the decision to like have that brownie or have a cookie or something like that, it's like if I make the decision to like put my goals aside and have that whatever sweet or whatever it is, I might as well also enjoy it. Like you don't want it to distract, like keep you away from your goals and to not enjoy it. But if it's gonna like keep you away from your goals, you might as well enjoy it. So I see it the other way around as well, in terms of like if it's getting you towards your goals, like there might be some time like you don't want to not enjoy it and it doesn't get you towards your goals. You don't want that at all. So I have no idea where I'm really going with this, but I just saw that like analogy of like if you did something that like kind of didn't get you to your goals, you might as well enjoy it. So if you're like, yeah, I want to go to that ball game, you should go to that ball game and completely enjoy it and not think about work. I think is what I was trying to say with that.
Yeah, it's like I think it's almost in the same table of like if you're making a decision on heads or tails and you flip it and then you get upset because you wish it would have been something else.
Oh yeah.
It's like the same of like going to the ball game of like, oh man, I should have done this article, but you're just thinking about the ball game and you're like, well, I should actually stay home because I'm not really enjoying this.
Mm-hmm.
It gets a little bit deeper when you start putting other people into the mix instead of like a cookie or an apple. Cause like you're like, oh, what value do I provide to that person knowing I'm there watching their ball game, even though I'm not fully enjoying it?
Yeah.
So that gets a little bit more complex, but we can keep it simple for the
Yeah.
the podcast. Something else that's been good and also having the same, but also is sharing wins and losses with my wife. We struggled a little, not struggled. I wasn't the very best at communicating with her because I didn't think she enjoyed hearing about it because I talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
Of like she being like, I this did this did that, and like trying to bring her along with that journey because she technically she is a part of it. She's not in the day to day, but she's like she cleans the house or she provides me comfort. She provides me love. Like she's really in it, just in not ways that are seen by day to day actions. Like she's like that foundation to the day to day actions.
Mm-hmm.
So like trying to share wins and losses with her, and then having her understand that it's okay for her to ask questions about those win and losses. because she struggled with being like, hey, I don't know what to ask. Like, and I'm like, ask me anything. Like, you can compound questions on top of each other, and
Like
you'll get to a
ChatGPT.
yeah, and you'll get a pretty good idea on like what I'm doing after a while, and be like, oh, you did 60 clicks today. Woo!
I also want to say when my wife, I've told her things before, and then she'll ask a question. I'll be like, "How'd you know that?" And she'll be like, "You told me." And I was like, "That's really cool that you like were listening to me." Like about something that was like not that she listened to me, but like something that she listened to me that I thought I only cared about that was like super technical in the weeds of the business. And so she like when I know that she like actually listens to that, that like makes me feel like really cared for. Is probably the best way to put it. Like I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's fun having those conversations with them. Even you guys can. She was I was like, you should start a blog. You have a lot of information in this specific category. The other night, she's like, where do you think I should create a blog at? And I'm like, what? What'd you say about blog? You need help creating a blog, huh? I can help you.
Yeah, I will say on that same topic, I've struggled with that a little bit because and not just my wife, there's been other people in my life that I've seen like, hey, you have a decent amount of expert knowledge in this area. If you started a blog, you could probably do pretty well. And it's the thing that I struggle with is like, from my perspective, I'm like, if you just started this and just stuck with it for a year, like you wouldn't even need to go to your job anymore. But I need to work on not necessarily putting like my dreams onto other people. And so I think that is probably the best way to say it. So like even my wife, she started a blog before and then did it for like 2 weeks. And then, posting isn't like it takes a certain person to like keep continuing it, especially when there's like you've got to want to do it, you've got to want to learn. And I think she was doing it because she saw the excitement that I had, and she wasn't doing it because she wanted to do it. Does that make sense? And so when I when that was like when I realized that, I was like, I shouldn't have her become a blogger because I want her to become a blogger. Like if she wants to become a blogger, she'll do it on her own. And so I've just struggled with that in a little bit because there's even after that experience, I'm like, man, if she would, this was like 2 years ago that she wrote those like for 2 weeks. If she would have just stuck with that, like it would have been really interesting. But I also don't want to put that on her. Like there's things that she may want me to do that she would get excited if I were to do that I would want to do for her excitement and not just out of me wanting to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I struggle with that as well, as being like when you're so excited about something, you're like, oh, you should try this just because you got so much excitement about it.
Yeah. I will say actually you did that a little bit with the AI thing that I'm working on. Like seeing how excited you got about building it, I was like, I think we spent like you were like, what can we do today to get started? And I like my laptop's right here, and I like opened it up. I was like, I'll start coding some React. And then like 2 hours later, we had like a rough version working.
That's the struggle of our friendship, Theodore. That is my pro and the con of my personality. Because I'm like, I have this site I need to keep working on, but I'm like, so excited about this. And you're like, yeah, let's do it. And I'm like, no, TJ, tell me no.
It's like shiny object syndrome, but not really. Well, maybe. But this shiny object, I think is going to do that website that I just mentioned. I think will do. If it's not something we offer to other people, I think it's a tool that we will get great value of.
Yeah, I'm glad you know how to code a lot more than I do because it would still be dead in its tracks.
I've learned a ton. This thing I've been working on for like a week now, probably. Would you say maybe even a little more?
Yeah.
And I've learned a ton of stuff lately, and I'm getting very excited about how well it's working. Like sometimes I refresh the page to see how and I'm like, that worked. This is amazing. So
that's awesome. It's cool to see your motivation in things. And then you're like, oh crap, this site's not doing very well. Or you like it needs some more love.
Yeah.
No, but this project will benefit the growth of other things in the long term. So it's not the worst thing to be distracted on.
Yeah. I think we talked about it earlier. It's like a stepping stone, like building this and then whatever the next project is, like we can use the skills we learned from this project.
Yeah. Moving into the next little topic this is a little bit of a deeper one, guys, is death. Scary thing. I've had some time to think on it, and I still don't think very much about it. But what do you do in your untimely death for your spouse? So I think I brought this up to TJ one night. I was in my fields on my back deck,
Yeah,
and I was
you were like, have you thought about what would happen if you died? I was like, what do you mean? And you were like, the world would keep on spinning.
yeah, and I was like, how do we set our families up for the best amount of success when we die? Because we might be the fortunate one or unfortunate one, however you decide to take it, to know when you're going to die so you can get your things in order. Or you could be on the other side and just something happens and you're gone. And then you had no plan. So like I've been thinking like, how can I set my site up so that it runs just for my wife? Like she can collect checks each week to live her life for as long as she needs to after I'm passed. Or how can I set all this house stuff up for her? How can I get the business to keep going? Or can I have Theodore give her information, or have TJ take 10% to keep running it for her?
An operator fee? No, I
Which is
wouldn't do that.
it's a little bit more for you given you have a kid too.
Yeah, so I guess one of the things I'll say is like, if something were to happen to me, my wife would like the reason we're having this podcast is because you like started this conversation. I was like, I don't think she would have a clue at what to do in terms of like, there's people that I am responsible to pay for the work that they're providing. There's money in accounts that I don't even like, she knows of them, but I don't think she knows how to log into them. We don't really have like and I forget what it's called. It's like, if I go missing file to where it's like it's actually printed out, so it's not online or anything, and it's like, here's all the information you need to know to like, here's the login to all of my accounts. We haven't created that yet, and I think that would be a really cool idea to do. You definitely want to keep something like that safe if it has like all the information in. But yeah, like some of the business processes that I run, a lot of it is automated, but there's some things that are like, if this person doesn't get paid, they're going to be upset. And it would be nice if something did happen to me for her or someone to be like, hey, something happened to Theodore, like instead of leave them wondering. And I have never really thought about that. And then on the other side, like I do own some crypto, and like she has no idea how to like how to like use that. And in the space of crypto, it's hard to like ask someone, hey, here is what information I have about this crypto. Like there's a lot of people out there that are like, oh, there's this much money in crypto and you don't know how to access it. You don't even know how much money it is. Like there's people out there that will take advantage of someone like that. And so like the if I go missing folder will probably include a like sheet of like, here's step by step of what to do. Or here's someone that is like trusted that you can reach out to. Because I think my dad's the same way. He wanted to get into crypto, but like the technical part of stuff he never really got into. And yeah, it's just, I think it's worth having a plan, even if like you're not the one that benefits from the plan. It's still worth having a plan, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I wonder if it'd be good to update at the end of each year. Be like, here's updated passwords, here updated accounts, here's updated procedures.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also a benefit of creating procedures in your business that you can give to somebody else, is for it to keep going after you're gone.
Yeah, when I talked to Empire Flippers about selling one of my businesses, they were like, if you have, I think they called it standard operating procedures. They were like, if you have an SOP of your business for everything that is like needs to be done, they were like, you can sell your business for so much more, as opposed to some mangled mess that you just hand off to someone else. If you sell them a business and they're like, hey, we got a refund, what do we do? And then you like look at the handbook and you're like, page 4's refunds. Oh, this is what we do. They're like, you can sell a site for much. I say a site. You can sell a business for much more and much easier if you have that like all set up. And by the way, I do not have anything close to this set up. Like I need to work on this myself.
Yeah. I think that can move a little bit into the new site expectations, because my expectation is to not set, maybe it would be good to set that up for my site right now, but maybe not a little bit. Just because I'm like, I don't really know what's 100% important, what's not. I know posting an article is important. Like, that's good. Same with creating a video. But the new site expectations is really interesting. And you brought this topic up, so I'm going to let you explore a little bit more on it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to have a short conversation about if someone is watching us and maybe they decide to launch their own website or their own YouTube channel, in terms of, and this podcast is about relationships. So whenever you tell someone, hey, I'm going to be working on this YouTube channel, or I'm going to start this blog and be working on it now, there needs to be some form of expectation of how long you're going to be if you're in a relationship, you want the other person to kind of have an expectation of how much you're going to be working on it, and maybe even in the future, maybe what you could get out of it. So if you're like, hey, I'm going to be working on this blog for 2 hours a day, it's a lot easier if you're like, and by the end of 2 years, maybe I'll make some money with it. And so I think it's always good to have expectations whenever you're starting something new like that. And I just wanted to talk a little bit. Your site is like 6 months old now, right? It's only dang. So yeah, starting a new site, like you've kind of went through some of those like expectations management situations. And so between yourself and also your spouse, do you want to share anything about that and like the
I think
experiences
that
that you've went through?
now that we're talking about it, I feel like that falls into the having the same outlook and goals with your spouse is like them knowing like what is expected of it or like what you need to do to get to that goal. So like you were saying, like I am on workers comp. So like all I do is just sit here and hang out and write and all kinds of stuff because I just had surgery on my ankle. So I get plenty of time to write. So it really doesn't take out a lot of the time until I go back to work out of our personal time because I do a lot of writing when she's at work. But like it'll become a lot more in the front and we'll have to deal with it when there's more writing to be had when it's either early mornings or after work.
Yeah, and like we should talk about this maybe a little bit in terms of like a sacrifice. Like right now for you, it isn't really a sacrifice, and even for me, it's not really a sacrifice. But there has been a time, like I mentioned, the ball game. That's just one situation. There's probably 20 to 50 of those. It was like I gave something up to like focus on the website or the YouTube channel. Is that something that you've thought about or had any experience with yet, or is that something that's like coming in the future? You're gonna learn how to work on.
Yeah, actually, her family invited me over to watch the Chiefs game a couple weeks ago. And I was like, no, I probably shouldn't come over. I haven't created this video yet. I still need to create it. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I haven't said no to something in a while.
Yeah.
Like
Was it more difficult than you thought it would be? Or were they like completely okay with it? 'Cause
they were
that makes a big
they were
difference.
okay with it. They weren't like, why aren't you coming? Like we struggled, and you've mentioned, I think this to me before, like Christmas was difficult because there's so many personal feelings in it that when you're like, I don't think I should come to Christmas this year, or can we plan it at a later date, that like a lot of people upset about that. And you're like, we're at different points in life. Like
Yeah.
we have
And
different goals.
for context, my parents are divorced, so we've got like two families over here. Her parents aren't divorced, so they've got family over here, and then we've got like grandparents to go to, and that all adds up. And like last year was our second year married, I believe, and we didn't have a kid, but we were expecting, like I think she was like 8 months pregnant, like she was about ready to have a kid, and so we went to like so many different Christmases on the day of Christmas, and like the next day of Christmas we still were moving around, and she's like ready to pop, and we just did not have a good time going around. Like it didn't feel like we were just hanging out with family. It was like, hey, this is what we're expected to do, to go to all these people and hang around them, see them, shake their hands, eat food, and then go to the next one. And it just wasn't like what we wanted. And now like this year my son like just turned 1, and so like a couple weeks ago he wasn't 1 yet, and so we were like, we're going to do Christmas different this year. People are going to come to us. We're just going to chill. People can come to us. We know in reality, most of them want to see my son, just because he's like, when there's a newborn, that's what people like, that's what they want to see. And so we were like, people are just going to come to us. We don't have to get him out in the cold, and we don't have to do a whole bunch of moving around. And if it's important to them, they'll come see us. If it's not, we can schedule another day, or maybe we just don't need to see each other this year. And so that worked out so much better. We still ended up going to some other places, but it was like we went to my mom's, but we went to my mom's because there was also a bunch of other people there. But it made it a lot easier that like our main thing was like, we're mostly just going to stay home this year. And like having that conversation and knowing it ahead of time was really helpful.
Yeah, we still went to a lot of Christmases this year, and it was, like I said, that's a whole interesting balance there too. Man, we've hit a lot of our good topics today, Theodore. We're at 35 minutes.
I've got a couple more topics on past topics that I haven't talked about, but we definitely
bring it on, baby.
So the first one was back to sharing wins and losses. And Nico, I haven't actually told you this yet. So this is the first time I've actually like said a number. But last in 2022, I made over $1 million. So did I'm
Beautiful.
curious. What do you think? Actually, I think the number is like 1.2 million in revenue. Were you expecting that based on things I've said in the past? Does that shock you? Like, by the way, you were actually like you're the third person to know that number. Now there's going to be people who ever watch
Who
this
was the
episode.
second?
So the first was my wife, obviously. The second was my dad.
I thought you'd say your son.
And actually, the number I told my dad was like the day before I hit $1 million. I was like, he asked how the business was doing, and I was like, well, I think tomorrow I'll hit 7 figures for the year. And of course, he was proud of me. He was excited. And we can get into that just a little bit. But I wanted to know, like, were you expecting that's around like what I've hinted at and stuff, or
I don't think I had any expectations on what you make or will make, but I had an idea it was going to be higher given November kicked
yeah, the
really
income
well.
report.
Um,
The
and I think we've talked on the podcast a little bit. This is something I've had to work through a little bit. It's like seeing your success and me doing all. Of course, I have my successes, but like now that we're aligned on the same path, like of course you compare successes, and it's like that's something I've worked on in the past. Is like, oh, that's really good where Theodore's at, and like try not to think the most of where you're at. So I don't think about your income a lot, just
this
because
I really appreciate that.
it changes. I don't want it to have the ability to change how we view each other.
That is exactly where I was going in this sharing wins and losses thing. Which, so yeah, it was. I don't want people thinking that I made 1.2 million. Like top number was 1.2. I think I spent like half a million in expenses, which dropped the actual profit down to 700,000. But anyways, one of the things that I wanted to share about this was, by the way, my wife, my dad, and you are the only people in my actual personal life that know that number
When I
now.
get told in public,
I know. I was always like, because I was always curious what you thought of it, but I was like, I don't know how to bring this up in a natural conversation. Like,
hey buddy, I know
it's a
you.
good month this year.
I know you haven't made any money yet, but I just hit 7 figures.
I don't want, yeah, and I didn't want to be like that, but that was one thing that I wanted to share about this was like, as I was making the money, there was like there was a month where I made over $100,000, and I was like, well, shoot, I made 6 figures this month. And there was a part of me that was like excited. I wanted to tell people, or I wanted to tell someone, but I was like, it's at the point now. It's like if I've got family members that if I told them this, they would be like, oh, so you got some money to spare, or hey, my tire just went flat. And so that's one thing that I realized within me in terms of like making. There was a month I made 100,000. There were multiple months I made 100,000 this year, or last year, and it made me like start wondering what people's intentions were if they knew that. And so that's why I never really I shared it with my dad, and even after that I was like, I don't know if that was a good decision, because now like I don't want him to see me as like, we still live in a like it's literally a garage and we have one car. So we're not like super flashy with it. And by the way, a lot of it went to paying off debt. Like our net worth is like half of 700,000. Our net worth right now is like 300,000. So like I said, I think I said in my income report, I was like, I'm glad that when I launched one of the memberships, it was like monthly, because if all that money came in at once, I would have no idea how to spend it. I think like the first month I made 100 grand, like 80 grand of it I went out, gave out as bonuses, or I gave out as like giveaways to try to like make it grow more. And I would not do that again. Like that was money that was not well spent. I was just like shocked at how much money it was. I'm kind of like rambling now here for a minute, but I did want to like make a comment about in the terms of relationships. Like obviously my wife is going to know how much like we're making, and it's good to give her updates and stuff like that. And she loves like when I come in, I'm like, hey, this month is how much I made, this is how much I spent. But in terms of other relationships, like I have other friends that my wife and I have actually agreed not to let other people know. Like, not that we want to keep it a secret, but like our relationship, like her parents, my parents, we've got friends and stuff that like our relationship will be better if they don't know. Does that sound weird? What do you think of that?
No, that makes a lot of sense. Like if I told my mom I did 7 figures, there would almost be a little bit of a judgment there. Like in almost everything you do, they'll be like, "Oh, he's too good for that," and that's just one of my side of my family. Like that's a whole complex issue in itself. But the only people I would tell in my life is people who I knew could do critical thinking about their intentions and their thought processes.
Yeah, and like when I told my dad, my dad, I don't know, I was like proud to tell him, like, and the way he responded as well was like the intentions were only love. He's like, we had a conversation, and he's like, son, I'm really glad that you're able to do this well this early in life. And we talked about how he doesn't really have a retirement and stuff, and I don't know, it was definitely like touching, and I don't want to like go into it too much, but I don't know. I was really glad that my dad was one of the people that I could trust with that information, not to like ask. And he's never asked. There's been times I'm
Your
like,
dad is so giving. He's given so much to me.
and that's why I felt really comfortable telling him that. And like, and he knows that the niche that I'm in is like this. So, without sharing anything, I don't know. He's got the best intentions, and I believe that anyways, and so that's why I felt comfortable telling him. But I just wanted to make the note that like in terms of relationships and even spouses, like I'm glad that my wife is a person that I can tell her that to, and then she still be like, "Did you spend more than $200 eating out this month?" Does that make sense? Like I'm glad she's still. I don't want to use the term penny pinching, but she's still
Frugal.
like, "Babe, you don't need to buy that."
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really appreciative of that because I know there's a lot of people out there that as soon as like a number hits the bank account, it's like, let's go to Hawaii, or you know what I mean?
That's the same thought process. So my wife's mother's her great grandmother just passed away, and she had a life insurance policy, and the life insurance policy went to two different people, so it got split in half. And those two different thought processes, you can tell a difference. So one person got 14. She was rather old, so there wasn't that much of a life. I don't know how it works, but I would expect there wasn't much left of it. And I don't know how she was using it, but both sides got 14 grand, like $14,000. And one side's like, I was looking at how to spend this. I'm ready for it to hit my account. And the other person's like,
Expecting it.
oh, how can we put it into this account to grow a little bit, or what can we do with it? Can we take a tiny little vacation, but use the rest as little backup money? Like that's almost how like when you tell people what you make is like they have those two different like, oh, I need this from them, or like, oh no, that's really good. Like how can we help them learn how to use that better, or how can we be of a support?
Yeah, and something weird looking back, I think it was like if it's 700,000 profit, it means like each month it was like 60 grand. It did not feel like that. It did not feel like I was averaging 60 grand. Like even now, I think last month it was like a loss, but I don't know. We did not feel as, I don't want to say rich or wealthy. The income didn't like, it wasn't even lifestyle inflation. It just didn't. I think it was because, like I said, we paid off a lot of debt. We paid off student loans, house debt, car debt, like over 6 figures of debt, which I'm so glad that worked out because we were in it pretty bad. So, anyways, I don't want to like keep on this, but I just wanted to like make a note of that. Another
TJ, were
thing,
you going to tell me other than this podcast?
yeah, I was gonna tell you. I was actually gonna
Okay,
tell you
sweet.
last episode, but I didn't know how to put it in there.
Yeah, no, and back to what I was talking about just for another quick second is
And I trust you not to like I know that you have enough critical thinking skills, like you said, to like not hold it against me or whatever.
no, and I used to, like, if I'm going to be honest, like when we were right out of high school and I was living at your house and your first YouTube channel was just taken off and you're like, I made this much money. It was more of a jealousy thoughts back in the days because I had no idea what I was doing. I had no
Mhm.
idea what I wanted to do. Of course, your best friend's doing all this good stuff. Like that's something you have to work through, and I feel like anybody would work through. So like I've had a long time coming on being able to critically think about it and be like, I'm really happy for him. Like, and it's really being happy in your own life too. To like, I've come to realize money's not everything. Like
Definitely.
we've talked about this last podcast. Like I have a beautiful wife. Like I live in a great house. Like I'm happy. Like I'm happy you're making more and I'm happy you're doing well. Like I'm happy for you for that. But like
Mhm.
I'm happy myself too. So trying to bridge those gaps and being like, I'm happy for him too.
That's a good note.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
When my mindset switched to money's not everything, I think it removed a lot of my mental barriers of people around me.
It would be cool to have an episode on things I learned, like having $1 million year. It was like literally the first $100,000 month, which if you look at it, I think it was like 1 month was like, I think I had like two almost $300,000 months that like did it really like a lot. But anyways, it was like the first month that I made over six figures. I was like, oh, when they say money isn't everything, or no, when money doesn't solve problems, like they really mean it. Like it's one of those things that you kind of like, it's hard to believe it until you get there, but then you're like, there's 100 grand sitting in my bank account and I still have this problem. Like it's not going away. I'm gonna have to work on it.
That's so true. Like, and not trying to talk about myself again, but like,
No, you're good. It's good to have examples.
We make not bare minimum, but we make together. I think it's like 100 grand a year total. Like, and like we don't worry about anything. Like most of the time, we're like, oh, we have enough cash for this. Like if we don't go crazy, but like our lifestyle is pretty comfortable. Like I'm not worrying. But it's like with this comfort, there's still problems that you were saying money doesn't fix. Like I still got to figure out how to pay attention to her better. I got to figure out how to love her better. Like those are the things that really matter. I've come to realize like money just makes it a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah. I guess since we're kind of on the topic, another thing that I struggled with on one of the months that I was making a whole bunch of money, I was like, if I work this out, I'm making so much an hour. And I think it was like, what is it? Like 100 of it's like 160 hours a month. And so 100,000, it averaged out like over $1,000 an hour or something like that. And I was like, I could either like work on the business more and make $1,000 an hour average, or I could go do this thing with these people. And I remember thinking like, I probably like monetarily, I need to say no to that, but also like I don't want to be that guy. You know the like the businessman who just gets away all of like all that matters is money. Like and not even so much more to just not be that guy. Like I still want those other things to matter to me. Even like I think that's why I hinted at the last episode. I was like, I need to work on more than it like now that the like bank account's at a certain number or the net worth's a certain number, like adding more to it doesn't give me more security. Like going from 0 to 100,000 definitely gave me security, but going from like 100,000 to 150, like that's not as much security as going from 0 to something did. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I know more funny. Have you ever pulled out the 100K and like in stacks and been like, I wonder what this feels like?
Did you know you can't withdraw a certain amount of money out of a bank? I didn't even think about that.
Really? I thought you can, but you have to give them like notice.
So, well, yes, sometimes they do investigations, and if it's over 10,000, it's like there's definitely someone like reviewing the thing. But local banks, they really don't like that
because banks usually leverage your cash to give loans to other people. So if you're like, oh, we don't have 100K to give this guy.
Yeah, they don't like it. Also, I would be worried if I was driving around and I had 100 grand in the backseat. Like, I'd be worried someone would hit me or something and go up in flames.
Yeah, it's such a complex thing thinking about because money is so secretive in life. Sometimes religion is so secretive in life. Political views are so secretive in life, and it's like, how can you be secure with the people in your life to talk about those three things? And this is kind of just fallen into a life podcast at this point, but like I think that takes to the amount of people you have around you and like not amount, the type of people you have around you.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I can see some of the people in your life, you'd be like, I probably shouldn't tell them that. But some people you're like, yeah, I trust that they're okay.
I've struggled with that before too. I've even mentioned on the podcast, I think sometimes I say like, I'm a pushover. Like if someone's like, hey, I don't have a job. Can I have like $500? Like someone I haven't talked to in 5 years reached out to me on Facebook like a couple months ago, and they were like, "Hey, I just got laid off. I'm not doing like, it's not doing too well." And
Really?
I just had I'll tell you their name after this podcast. But they were like, I just had a kid, and like if you could just give me $40. And in the back of my head, I'm like, is this actually this person? Because I haven't talked to them in 5 years, and they're just randomly asking me for $40. And Facebook, it was Facebook messages. So it's like commonly those things get hacked or whatever. And I just like struggled thinking this. I'm like, am I at a point where I just like don't think about people in those kind of situations, or like, is this really a situation? Also, like, actually, this is another thing I was going to mention. I just know how to weave it in here. But so one thing that my wife and I have kind of agreed on is that we're not going to give people money. So this was a great example, because I was even thinking, I was like, is how do I know this person's going to use it on food and not drugs or alcohol or something, like something that like, well, I don't even know. And so we've kind of agreed, like, when people ask for money, instead of saying, hey, here's $500 to get you through the month, which, by the way, this isn't like a regular occurrence. This happened a couple times last year. People asked us for money. um, we're instead going to say, hey, we will go to Walmart with you and help you make like healthy choices that are frugal, and then we'll pay the Walmart bill. And what I realized was people people don't want that. They want the cash. And so, like, I don't know, it just like,
Have
maybe it was a pride thing, because maybe if it was the other way around, I would be like, I don't want you like picking out my food, but also, like, I wanted to make sure that they weren't spending it on alcohol, or that they weren't spending it on drugs or anything, if that made sense,
yeah.
or cigarettes.
Yeah,
But
that's a complex issue in itself. Like I've given people money, been like people on the like at the intersection have been like, honestly, just do whatever you want with it. Like if this
yeah,
helps.
I also know with like giving a charity, you're also, whenever, like, it's like a philosophical thing, when you give someone something, you're not supposed to have any expectations. But I found that to be difficult, especially when you know who you're giving it to and you know their lifestyle choices. Like, you don't also want to enable them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess that's another question is like, now that you've top 1%, Theodore, you've hit that. Like, how do you now, if this year's the same, like how now that you've got in a place where your net worth 6 figures, like that's healthy at 26, how do you give back in a sense? Like, what does giving back look like for you then at that
Yeah,
point?
it's like the saying, what got you here won't get you there. And I've actually been thinking a lot about this, because I'm like, even if, like, I honestly am a little like, I'm definitely competition against myself. Like, I want to beat last year's number, but I'm like, I got I luck was on my side last year. I picked a good niche and I executed well, but luck was also on my side. And so, um moving forward, I'm like, what would I care about more than raising the net worth so many digits? And that's been like difficult for me. Like, I don't know, like, past getting comfortable, I'm not sure what else motivates me, because I know for a long time, like, when my son was being born, our net worth was like negative 100,000, and that motivate. I was like, this has to work. Like, my wife and son need a warm house and food in their belly, and I was like, this is. I will work 12 to 16 hours a day to get this thing to work. And I think you saw some of that, but now, like, that's not a problem anymore. And I feel like maybe even a little bit, I've been slacking a little bit. Like, I'm not sure what's gonna, like, maybe I'm just motivated by push more than pull. And maybe I just need like something to push me into a new boundary, or a new, like, maybe I need something new that pushes me. Does that make sense? Do you have any ideas? What are your
You,
thoughts on this?
you didn't answer my question, Theodore.
I know, that's what I'm saying. What's your thoughts?
I was just asking how you were going to give back. Like, you know how like income schools, like I created this site, which is really interesting. I need to watch more of their videos. I haven't watched a ton here recently. But like we're going to create this site and everything the site makes gives back. Like, how can you use either your expertise or like money you've made to kind of help out other people? I think that's, and you don't have to, like the money you made is your money, but like I would hope that if I got to that point, be like, how can I give back in a sense, whether it's people around me or
That's a good
other
point.
people who need help.
I
Because like
will
if you're
say,
in such a fruitful position where you're like, yeah, another 60K a month,
I
been
will
good.
say, since you asked that question, I'll share a feeling slash emotional slash like point that I got to one point. So my son needed medicine. Like, he was spitting up a whole bunch. And so it's basically like Pepto Bismol, but it like helps keep his food down when he was like eating so, or drinking so much milk, and like crawling around and stuff. And so we had to go get his medicine, and I waited in line, and then I got like, it took like 30 minutes to wait through line, and they were like, here's the medicine. And I was like, oh, here's my insurance card. And the insurance card didn't work. I don't know why. I don't know if it didn't match. I'm not completely sure how insurance works, but I gave them the insurance card and they said it didn't work. And I was like, my son probably needs this. I don't really want to wait, and like, I don't want to go find out why it didn't work and then like wait in line again. And if it took too long, I might have to wait till tomorrow. Like, what's it just going to cost without insurance? And they were like, oh, it's $100. And I was like, oh, $100, I'll just buy it. I think insurance took it down to like $6, but it was like $100. And so I was like, oh, I'll just pay this $100. And then on the way home, this is really weird. You know how sometimes you have memories where you're like, you can see yourself like third person, like as you're experiencing this memory. That's like this right now. I was driving home and I was like, you know, it'd be so cool for Christmas if I could just get a list of everyone in our town that doesn't have insurance but needs medicine for like their kids under the age of 5 or something, and I could just pay all those off. And I was just like, that would be so cool to like I was in that like that I had that experience of like, oh, $6, oh, it's $100, oh, we'll just get it for my son, like he needs it. If I could like maybe not even like a proud thing, but like I don't want other people to be in that spot where they can't afford that medicine for their. Does that make sense? Like maybe that is part of like one of the emotional things. Like I started tearing up. I'm like, I know there's gonna be people like this month that are not gonna be able to afford that medicine for their kid. That like it's not the kid's fault they're not getting medicine, and it may not even be the parents' fault. But I wish they could have that medicine to like not suffer. Isn't even like my son wouldn't necessarily suffer. He just spit
Not have
up
to
more.
deal with the
Yeah.
pain of
And
not being able to get it.
on the way home, I was like, it'd just be so cool if I could just like write a check and make sure that everyone in town this month had like didn't have to worry about that.
Have you thought about? I know a lot of, whether you're religious or not, a lot of churches have some really good programs to like provide, like, if your power's out, here's some money to pay your electric bill. And they're pretty good about being like, hey, it's been 3 months, we've had to pay your electric bill. How can we help you get back on your feet instead of paying it for 12 months straight? Yeah, I think that'd be good to look into more for yourself. And you don't have to, you can follow your own convictions on that. I've always thought it'd be really cool to, we could probably talk about our background someday. My parents dealt with addiction. I was fortunate to be where I'm at because of the people who surrounded me during those hard times, so that I didn't even feel like they were hard times. To be able to create a foundation or a group of people where you're like, these kids are dealing with this same outcome. How can I either be around them or find people to be around them to create that safe space for them to be able to have those people around them to keep growing? Because I wouldn't be where I'm at today without the people who's been around
Certain
me.
people, yeah. Yeah, even my stepbrother, like we've been lifting together. I don't know if I told you this. We've been lifting together. His deadlift has tripled in a month. It's mostly due to like him having better form, like me being like, hey, keep your back straight and stuff. But he's able to deadlift almost as much as my wife. And he's super like, that really excites him. He's like hyped up about that. But I was like, what are you thinking?
I'm trying to think about stepbrother. Is it just had a kid?
No, the younger one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The one that's like he's 13 now.
Oh, cool.
So like I said, we've been mostly working on form, but when we started like a month ago to like what we did yesterday, like the amount he can deadlift has tripled. And so I'm glad that I've been able, and I don't want to say anything. He definitely has had a childhood that is probably similar to mine, but sometimes I look at the experiences that he's had and I'm like, I wish that he didn't have that experience, if that makes sense, without basically sugar coating it. And so sometimes like when we're lifting together and he gets excited and stuff, I'm like, I'm glad that I can be like that brother for him that like brings him positive experiences. So I really appreciate that.
And that's what's good about the business, is able to create those so you don't have to worry about, oh, I'm at work, or those different things, to try to tie it in just a little bit more.
Yeah. Before we end this podcast, I don't know if you have anything else to say, but there is another thing I wanted to talk about a little bit.
Keep it going, Boo.
It was about managing emotions. And you actually brought this up, but I had some stuff I wanted to say about it.
Mm.
Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, you're
All
good.
right.
I'm here.
So in terms of managing emotions, there's like 3 basic things that have helped me. And I just wanted to share them in terms of like businesses and relationships, specifically like with spouses or really important people in your life. I thought this managing emotions section would be really good, because what I've noticed is the negative experiences in most of my relationships have been due to emotions, or either side not like having good controlling of their emotions. I don't know. And the first one is sleep. So there have been many times where I do not get enough sleep, and I'm like, babe, we probably should not talk much until I get some more sleep. And I don't know if that's right or wrong, but it helps our relationship. So again, don't know if it's right or wrong. I'm not going to suggest it for anyone else. But what I have found is that sometimes me just being like, "Hey, I did not sleep well. Can we have this conversation later?" And there was an example I was going to share, but I forgot exactly what it was. She was asking me something and like asking me to make a decision. And I was like, I don't want to make that decision right now. I am exhausted. We should make that decision tomorrow together. And I found that to be really helpful. So the first one is sleep. If you are tired, you should not be having important conversations or making important decisions. The second one is food. There have been times where I will eat something and then the conversation, like, I don't know what it is. I usually fast a decent amount. So like I'll fast until like 2 o'clock or whatever. And then the food just like, if you're hungry, like, and maybe this is different for people that fast or don't fast, but if you're hungry and then you eat something, like if you're starving, the conversations and your own emotions, like there's been times where I've been hungry and I'm like, I need to eat something before we talk about this. And I've just found that to be helpful. So the first one is sleep. The second one is food. The third one, I'm just going to basically call stoicism, which is a broad general philosophy about like things mattering basically. And what I've gotten most from it is that there's a lot of times that you have a conversation, or you can call it an argument, things that you disagree on. And sometimes it's easier just to let the other person, like, does it really matter? And it's easy for me practicing stoicism, which sounds weird to say practicing stoicism, but there's a lot of ideas in stoicism that like when you read them and you start to think about them and you apply them in your life, so you realize like what really matters and what doesn't matter. So like if you're like arguing or having a conversation about this and things are starting to get like heated, it's like, I love you more than whatever this is about. So sometimes I think I don't know if I've said this on another podcast, but sometimes in conversations, I just take the L. I'll just take the L and let her have it. And I if it's been on another podcast, maybe we talked about it, but
I think we've talked about it in our personal life.
So sometimes I take the L and I'm like, thank goodness I took that L because I would have been wrong.
I
still like share. By the way, I still share what my thoughts are. I just don't like keep pushing it, if that makes sense.
And I think also something to note, which I think I can interject a little bit on your side, is taking the L, but then readdressing it the next day when you both are in clearer minds. Because I've had moments where I'm like, you really did do that? But if I try to talk to you about right now, you're going to break my neck. And then the next day I'm like, do you remember when you did that? She's like, oh yeah, I remember. I probably shouldn't have done that. And it's like taking the battle the next day. Like it's okay to be like, she's a little hot-headed right now. She's not going to be thinking clearly.
Yeah, it's like this sleep and food thing. And I'm the same way. Like if I'm hungry and I'm tired, like I'll probably say some things that aren't necessarily true.
And I will say it's definitely on the person you've married, because I am very fortunate to have a forward-thinking wife and someone who's pretty inward-thinking as well. So she's very much like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that. Or she's a very kind woman. Woman. I never called her a woman before. She's like, she's very kind and she's very thoughtful. So that helps these three things move forward. And I would say the same with Theodore's wife as well.
Yeah, and I think that really comes down to like deciding who to marry, because when people say, like, I will say there's probably people that are not ready to be married that should not. If that makes sense. I don't know. I don't want to call anyone out or say anything weird about other people. I don't want to set expectations, but what I'm saying is you can marry someone who does not have the ability to let things go. And that usually does not create a good situation, a good marriage, or lead to a good business.
Right before my first marriage, I dealt with this.
Your first marriage?
Oh, no, right before.
Your only marriage. Right before you got married. That's the right way.
Yeah. This was a good podcast, dude.
This was a good podcast.
I enjoyed this one. Hopefully, and guys, there's people who's watched us who are much older than us and have probably been through a lot more life and business with life. So if you guys have anything to interject, you can put in the comments below. I think we'll appreciate it.
We're just still learning.
We're two 26-year-olds who think we have life figured out and just trying to figure out the rest. So
I don't think we ever shared this on the podcast before, but did you know that Nico is exactly 1 week older than me?
He's my younger brother.
He always calls me. I love it.
Yeah. So we're just trying to figure out life. We're trying to figure out business. TJ's figured out a little bit better than I have. We'll get there.
I think I said this. My goal with this podcast is to get Nico to $10,000 a month.
Let's see if TJ can get me 1,000 articles, guys.
1,000 articles.
So since he won't give me cash.
You pull that card.
No, I'm just playing. No, it's been good. Thank everybody for watching. I'm going to end it here. Since we're at an hour, we have some stuff we need to do. So
Yes.
thanks everybody for watching. Like and subscribe. Like I said, if you're older and you have some good bits of insightful wisdom, put it below.
We'd love to hear it.
We're always searching for more. So you guys have a wonderful day, and we'll see you freaking later. How do I? Oh, I end up here. Sweet.